It's not an easy thing to talk about, but what's even harder is dealing with the aftermath of a school shooting. There, I said it. Nobody likes to even say the word, myself included, but we have to. Because can you imagine? If I try to, my brain just stops me from imagining. And here's where my brain usually lands when I get to thinking about it. Can you imagine being a student and suspecting something like that was going to happen and not say anything? And then it actually happens. Back when Marjory Stoneman Douglas happened, the school shooting in 2018 in Parkland, Florida, we got together with students and paid tribute to students and teachers that tragically died. And when we saw their pictures, we got so bummed out and sad because they looked just like us. But the real heart-wrenching thing was what their friends and families were saying about these students. They were great kids. They had plans and promising futures. But there was one thing that really sticks out in my memory. There was one girl whose aunt made a public comment. It was something that really put me into a mental space where I just realized how important it is that we talk about this. The student's name was Cara Loughran, and she was 14, and her aunt said this. This morning, I had to tell my 8-year-old daughters that their sweet cousin Cara was killed in the shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School yesterday. We are absolutely gutted. While your thoughts are appreciated, I beg you to do something. This should not have happened to our niece Cara, and it cannot happen to other people's families. We don't want it to happen ever again, and we don't want that to happen to you. So let's talk about what you can do to help make sure something like this doesn't happen at your school. It's weird and morbid to talk about, I know, but sometimes you just have to embrace the awkward when you know a conversation is right to have. So let's just get brave and talk about it. Okay, so that's a pretty big question. And as much as we like to answer with 100% certainty, we can't. And the reason why is because research shows there are tons of different factors involved that made each incident different from the one before it. In society, you'll see that when stuff like this happens, there are 1,000 theories on what's to blame, and who's to blame, and policies to blame, and people to blame. Some are right, and some are well-intended, but wrong. So here are some facts that we know for sure. We got these facts and statistics from studies performed by the American Psychiatric Association and several law enforcement agencies such as the FBI and Secret Service, who have been on site for these events and have studied exactly what has gone on at these events and the events leading up to them. The first one that we thought was important and interesting enough to put in this video is school shooters are not necessarily mentally ill, but they are definitely mentally unhealthy. Again, there is a difference that we talk about in our video titled, What are mental health and mental illness? In short, it's possible to be really mentally unhealthy and not be mentally ill. But what we know from research is that school shooters always have a unique combination of emotional distress and possible mental illness, or traumatic life event, or other unique factors. This means that each event has a unique combination of causes. Some could be pure mental illness, some could be a combination of no mental illness, but with a lot of social alienation, like bullying or humiliation. One other thing we thought was notable enough to tell you. This specific part of the research tells us that just because these people are dangerous doesn't mean they're mentally ill. And more importantly, just because some people have a mental illness does not mean that they're always dangerous. That's really important to note. The last thing we want people to think is that all people with mental illnesses are dangerous. Okay, so dating all the way back to 1927, people have been researching mass effects of violence and what motivates the person responsible, and here's what we know. In the large majority of these horrible tragedies, law enforcement is just about always able to identify big problems or situations that led individuals to commit mass murder. Most of the time they have extreme feelings of anger and revenge and have fantasies of this violent revenge. Here's what was then said in this study entitled Mass Shootings and Mental Illness by Dr. James Knoll of the State University of New York. In a detailed case study of 5 mass murderers who did survive, a number of common traits were found. The subjects had all been bullied or isolated during childhood and subsequently became loners who felt despair over their social alienation. And almost always, the motive for these horrible actions are classified as resentment or revenge on a person or a group of people. Did you catch that? They didn't say the people had a mental illness. They said that the person had been bullied in some way or been isolated in schools and felt alone. Here are some other things that can lead you to report suspicious behavior. And by the way, we'll talk more about how to properly report it in a minute. Studies showed that the shooters often leaked their intent to someone, which to me is good news because that means that there's usually a chance to stop things like this before they happen if we take them seriously enough and get brave and act on the information we get. Another suspicious behavior that's definitely worth reporting is school shooters often were found looking for weapons or writing disturbing things. So if you see something on a bathroom wall or on social media, again, take it seriously. It might be nothing, but it could be something. Okay, so you want to hear something chilling? At almost every school shooting in the past decade, a student or teacher has suspected something like that was going to happen. Whether it was the suspected student saying something, writing something, posting something, or maybe these people just had a weird feeling. Can you imagine being the one who didn't report something? There are a lot of reasons that people don't report. Sometimes it's because it's a big accusation. Maybe sometimes you're worried about being wrong and sending that student down some path with therapy or even the cops. Or maybe you don't want people to find out it's you that reported it. Whatever your worries are, and teachers, we're speaking to you too, err on the side of reporting. We can't stress this enough. Play it out in your head. If you're wrong, no harm done. It'll be anonymous, which means no one will know it was you that reported it. If nothing else, that student will receive the attention and help they deserve for a problem or pressure they're dealing with. If you were right about the suspicion, though, you're going to save so many people. So just report. At this point, you might be like, okay, but how though? Alright, so first, we really hope your school has a clear set of steps to follow to report this. And you should definitely talk about that after this video so you don't forget. If you don't, that is essential. So teacher in the room, if you're not sure, bring it up at the next staff meeting. If you do know what it is, make sure you share with your students right now, right after this video. Okay, now students, here are a couple of other ways to report suspicious behavior. You can always go right to your principal, like we don't know what school you're at right now, we don't know your principal, but what we do know is that your principal wants to know immediately. If you have any reason to think lives of students and staff are in danger, just go to the front office. There will probably be a secretary. Just say this: I need to speak with Mr. or Mrs. whoever. I think someone might be in danger and I'd like to speak with them right now. Okay, so that should do it. But if for some reason it doesn't, then you could report it directly to the police. I'm not joking either. If this sounds extreme to you, it's not. It's the right thing to do. Trust us. You'll be happy you did. So a cool thing they have in the state of Florida is something called the 4to5 Florida app, which is an app that you can report suspicious behavior or activity with the push of a button. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save tons of lives. So please, if you live in Florida and you're a student or a teacher, make sure you get into this app. And if you're in another state, check to see if your state has one and download it if they do. So here are the big takeaways that we learned today. We can learn that sometimes bullying and the way we treat people can have even more harmful impacts on people than severe mental illness. So remember that when you say something to someone or pick on someone or exclude someone, remember that when you see other people getting picked on, bullied, or excluded, not only is it the kind thing to do to prevent someone from feeling that way, but you could be saving that person from heading down a dark path, changing their life and thousands of people's lives forever. Remember that mental illness isn't always the cause. Also, if we keep our eyes and ears open for the signs, they're there. We can do something about it and play a huge part in making sure that something horrible doesn't happen at our school. Finally, you have to report if you feel like there's anything there's to report. That's the best way to prevent these horrible situations. It's not trying to figure out someone's mental health. It's not asking someone direct questions about it. It's about seeing something and saying something. And remember, if we keep our eyes and ears open for the signs, we could do something about it and play a huge part in making sure, like Carl Loughran's aunt said, that it doesn't happen again.